Hello and welcome to the 1904 Club podcast, the Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. And we've got a very special guest today. No, not you, Prutz, coming from Germany. We've got Steve Brew. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Yeah, very good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. Burnsy, you're there as well. Are you well?
Yeah, and I'm looking forward
Burnsy
to
used to be the one. Burnsy used to be the one that gave me stick every Saturday. Pick the wrong team. What's he doing with his formation? Can't understand that call. I loved it, Burnsy, back in the day. Really did.
It's not changed, Steve. Don't worry, it's not changed at all. That's literally what we speak about every week.
Absolutely, I bet it's not.
Nice to see you, Steve. But you always disarmed me post-match. You knew when your team had played not great. You used to come out and admit it straight away. You weren't one of these managers that used to say, "Oh well, it was this." You just said, oh, "Look, I'll hold my hands up. That wasn't good enough."
Yeah. I know. Well, it's easier that way sometimes than trying to bluff it, isn't
it? Yeah, true.
Prutz, out in Germany.
Yes,
in Hamburg, which was eventful, shall we say, on Sunday.
It was. Yeah, we were kind of the other side of town, out at Hamburg's the stadium. They're doing covering the Poland Netherlands game, and that a bit of news came filtering through the Reeperbahn, obviously a very famous part of Hamburg, and if you're a Beatles fan, that's the kind of place that you head to. And I suppose you can be a fan of other things, but we won't go into that. But it's a very unique part of this wonderful city. But there was a bit of nonsense going on with some fellow that was quite obviously off his rocker, walking around with weaponry, which meant it got shut down pretty swiftly. And in true kind of Teutonic style, he got dealt with very, very quickly. So hopefully that part of town is now safe, because from what I've seen so far, it's been lovely. The Polish fans were great. The Netherlands fans marched the 2 or 3 kilometres from the city centre. There was about 10,000 of them walking through the streets, all a riot of orange and colour and noise and stuff. It was brilliant. So the game we did yesterday was really, really good fun. And then we obviously finished it off with watching the England game, which the second half got me right off to sleep pretty swiftly. Once it finished, it was a win, and the wins are the most important thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, they say don't peak too soon in tournament football, don't they?
Mm.
Go on, Benji.
Steve, what did you make of England last night?
Well, I think like everybody else, we were very, very good for 30, 35 minutes, and then all of a sudden it sort of changed, didn't it? I think the substitutions that they made, and obviously the difference in attitude of the Serbians in the second half was there for everybody to see. And all of a sudden they started asking us a few questions, and yes, it's a win. Yes, for 35 minutes we were good, but that flaw that we seem to have seems to come back and bite us now and again, doesn't it? We're going along really, really nicely, and then all of a sudden we seem to not fall off the cliff, but we're nowhere near where we were to the levels in the first 30, 35 minutes. And I think the big question and the big debate that Gareth will be asking himself this morning is the left-hand side is when you haven't got a natural left footer, or you haven't got a natural width even as well, then the number of times Trippier's in the last third and has to come back on himself and go back again is a concern. Whether Shaw is getting fit or going to be fit, that's going to be a big call. But I'm like everybody else. Look, we got the win. We're always a bit nervy, always with England. They leave us with something to chew on, but a win's a win.
Steve, from your point of view, that really unique perspective that you got with the amount of games that you got under your belt, when we are all sat there poring over what the team's done and the reaction to the team, and it's funny, isn't it? Because there's so much focus on Gareth Southgate, and rightly so. He's got one of the most high-profile jobs on the planet, but the players that he's got are phenomenal footballers. So it's the manager that gets the brickbats when things don't go great. But you must be stood there as a manager going, "Well, I've set the team up. You were unbelievable for 35 minutes. Why aren't you doing that unbelievable stuff still?" Because
you have to pay a big compliment to the opposing team too. And do you know, David, it's incredible. You know, an ex-manager, or what I look at what the managers do, substitutes wise, tactically wise, or whatever they do. You know, and I sit and still do it to this day. You know, and the thing what we've got in England, we've got very, very, very good players in Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, and Jude Bellingham. They're all terrific, right? And there's nobody better on the planet than probably Bellingham. They're all number 10s. They all enjoy that position as their position, and there lies the problem, so for the sacrifice, for the sacrifice of the team, do you leave? You obviously left Palmer out, and do you leave Foden out? How do you dare leave Foden out? But he's simply not as effective. He's still a fabulous footballer, but we're not getting the best out of him when we're playing on the left-hand side because he wants to be in the pitch.
Did leaving Grealish out the squad completely come back and to some almost bite them on the backside last night? Because he could have played there, couldn't he? He could have given them natural width.
Well, there's him who gives them natural width. There's the kid who plays at Crystal Palace, gives you natural width. There's the kid who plays at Newcastle, gives you natural width and a bit of pace too. So, I think there's the big questions. Of course, we've got a wonderful, wonderful squad of players, but unfortunately, our best players all want to play in the same position, which is always a little bit of a problem to try and fit them all in.
Is that to do with? Sorry, Baz. It just intrigues me because if you listen to, and if you've been in football in different generations, there's always fingers pointed about where there's potentially a dearth of talent in England coming through, and it has changed, and sometimes it mirrors what you see on the continent. But with the development of St George's Park and with academy football changing slightly, and those pathways that Gareth's so not bothered about, he's focused on, which is right. So you get these players moving seamlessly through the age groups, so they can then perform together at the top end. Is it a bit of an anomaly, Steve, that they've now kind of pulled out? You're looking around going, I'd say 20 years ago, you'd have been going, well, we don't really have a number 10 that blows anyone away. And now you're going, well, hang on, we've got possibly 4/5 that are the main men for their specific teams. So therein then becomes that huge question, going back a generation to Gerrard and Lampard. You go, well, these are amazing for their teams, but then do we have to sacrifice one for the greater good of how he wants to put an 11 together?
Well, that was the end of Paul Scholes, if you remember that conundrum.
Yeah.
Where do you play Paul Scholes? You have to play him, but where do you play him when you've got Gerrard and Lampard? And it's fair to say Gerrard and Lampard really didn't complement each other either, did they? I mean, to the degrees where they played for their club team. So all of that is around about getting the balance right. And you're right, we have got some wonderfully gifted footballers. However, the one person in particular who stood out for me was the young centre half who came into the team and did really, really, really well.
Yes.
But before it, we're thinking, well, hang on a minute. We haven't got a natural left back in the team who, apart from Shaw, who's injured, and we're not as strong as what we used to be central defenders wise.
Yeah, correct.
So, so it's the generational thing that we've got 3-4 wonderful number 10s. We really haven't got that many midfield players. Declan Rice is a wonderful player. The emergence of Mainoo's obviously come to the fore. And in that position, there's no Steven Gerrard or a Paul Scholes, for example. But look, overall, I think we've still got a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. But them little questions must be the ones that obviously Gareth must be going through umpteen times and keeps them up all night, which unfortunately happens when you're a manager.
Come on, Benzie.
Did the Trent Alexander thing work? Because there was a lot of talk pre-match about whether he was the player to play alongside Rice. Did it work in your opinion, lads?
He did okay, didn't he? He did okay for me. He did okay. He got caught a couple of times, especially in the first half.
First on the Mitrovic shot, that was his bit heavy touch, wasn't it? Something he's lashed past the post.
Yeah, with a Mitrovic shot with that chance. You know what you're going to get with Trent when he plays in there. He's capable of finding a wonderful pass, and we can understand why he's in there because his passing range is arguably better than most. But then again, you could argue there's another one playing out of position. And I know he's come and said that they've worked on it for the past year or so. So whether they're getting, we're not privy to behind the scenes, but whether they've worked on it in training and all the rest of it. But obviously Gareth wants him in the team. And that was pretty evident by picking him last night. Is there a case of, I know obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold played in that role alongside Rice, but dropping Bellingham a bit deeper
to allow Foden to play in the number 10, and then you can perhaps get an Anthony Gordon or a Cole Palmer wide left. So you've got Foden in his more natural number 10 role, and just give Bellingham that ability just to be whatever he wants to be. Because last night we saw so many times where he was dropping to the edge of his box, and there was that wonderful moment in the first half where he picked the ball up under pressure, was fouled, and then was on the floor, but still kept the ball and raced away. You know, Bellingham, he's got that discipline about him already, hasn't he? That you can just say to him, right, go wherever you feel. But then if you bring Foden, who probably needs to be maybe a bit more structured, and play him in that 10 and get somebody with a bit more width on that left hand side, because as we've already said, you know, Steve mentioned it. Every time Trippier went out, he came back in, and we were very lopsided. Everything good was down the right. There was nothing wide left. Whereas if you've got a Palmer, even an Eze, somebody out naturally wide left, you can stretch it a bit more.
Yeah, the thrilling thing about Bellingham, and you're watching kind of the talent generate itself in real time, is the goal that he scored. And it's, again, if you're listening to this and you're of a certain kind of age bracket, it just stinks of Brian Robson. It was amazing. It was, you know what I mean? It's him powering forward, seeing a gap. No one can live with him. I'm heading this, and it's obviously it's a relative term, but it's a brave header as well. There's no one stopping him getting on the end of that. Whether it's someone coming flying through with a fist or a boot of it, he's smashing that in the back of the goal, and it was such a thrilling goal and energetic goal. And I think you're right, Baz. I think if he does drop back to somewhere around the Rice, then he's got even more of the pitch to cover, but he seems to be the type of player that can cover wherever you put him. So maybe that sense of dropping back to get on the ball, he's already in and around there on the ball. I'm not saying for 1 second that him and Rice start getting on each other's toes or in each other's pockets, but he's got the capacity, energy-wise and quality, to be able to cover the extra probably 15, 20 yards of the pitch that you're giving him the responsibility for. And I think you're right, that would bring others into play. Go on, Bernsey.
I was going to say, if only we had somebody on the 1904 club that could validate that comparison with Brian Robson. Maybe somebody on the 1904 club today played with Brian Robson. Steve, can you see Prutz's comparison?
Well, by the way, now you are talking of the complete midfield player. You know, Captain Marvel himself was something else, and a force of nature, I have to tell you, and I had the privilege to play with him. And he was 31 when I first joined up with him, so he was pushing on a little bit, but he was a magnificent footballer, you know. But I think what we've got to understand with Bellingham is he wants to have that freedom so he can go and do what he does, exactly what he did yesterday. And Gareth has made it pretty clear that he's going to play with two holding midfield players, somebody alongside Declan Rice. So I think he thinks to himself, well, I've got to play Bellingham in his position where he's just free. He's free. I don't think we've never seen a Gareth team really where you could just go and say, go on, then I'm going to play, for example, we could play Declan Rice, we could play Bellingham and Foden and play somebody wide. I don't think that's going to happen in play with two number 10s, if you like. I don't think that would happen because I haven't seen Gareth play like that since he's been in his tenure. So I can't see that happen. Yeah.
Do you think structurally, and it's something that fascinates me because kind of my end of what we do and speaking to managers and coaches and players and ex-players, and I've got lots of peers that were teammates that have gone into coaching, and I can sometimes sit and listen to a conversation where it's numbers, isn't it? Oh, we've got a 4, we've got 6. I mean, you could do a 10, and there is that 1 foot in the past where. And again, it's probably along the lines of another former teammate of yours, Roy Keane, talking about what a midfielder does, which is, to put it very simply, runs, heads, tackles, passes, scores goals, hopefully. So can we get over intellectual about saying, well, this player needs to do X, Y, and Z, when in theory, that middle portion of the pitch, when Jude can do what he can do, when Declan can do what he can do as well, you kind of say, yes, we want holding midfielders, but we don't literally mean stay there, do we? We don't literally mean sit in front of the back four and dictate.
It's a fine argument, isn't it? I mean, what is the complete midfield player, and what number would there be these days? You know, we're talking about academies and structures, and this is what it's done. It's bred us very, very good players. Don't get me wrong, but you are pigeonholed into this, are you an 8 or a 6 or a 10, basically? And every midfield player will probably want to be the 10. But, you know, the complete midfield player like a Brian Robson, you couldn't just put him in as a number, for example. You know, he had to have the ability to get forward. And yes, he could head and tackle and defend. And that was a midfield player, what he would do. The complete midfield players had a bit of it all. That's why they played midfield. That's why, you know, usually your best players play in the middle of the pitch. So, you know, in midfield. So, yeah, it's a great argument because we do talk about it. But look, Gareth has played 2 midfield players holding, if you like, if that's the right term, in his tenure. So I can't see it changing now. But the one thing that we have got is we've got great strength and depth that we can come onto the pitch. And Bowen, for example, who came on, you know, set up the real opportunity for Kane yesterday. So that was interesting to see an old Hull player getting on the pitch last night.
We were going to ask you about
Did you see that in it?
Go on, Lindsay.
All right, go on. No, go on, Baz. We'll probably ask the same question here. You fire away.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, you know, it was great for Jared to come on, and you know, when you think of all the talent that Southgate's got on his bench, as we've just spoken about, it's Jared Bowen who comes off the bench, and you know, in that second half, England didn't have a huge amount going forward, but he was direct. He got to the byline, got the cross in. Obviously, great save from the goalkeeper. Just talk to us a bit about Jared, if you can, Steve.
Well, listen, he was brought to my attention, and he was 16 playing for Hereford. So we had to persuade Ehab to part with 50,000 quid, I think it was at the time.
My God.
And you know, sometimes in management, or when you find something like that, I never thought I'm going to be brutally honest here. I never thought he's going to reach them heights as what he's reached, the kid. But the one thing about him is, and especially now, is you can trust him. And I think that's why Gareth put him on the pitch yesterday at a time when England weren't at their best. He knew that he could come in and fill in a play position and do the other side of the job, really, which is to do your defensive duties, and he does that in abundance. The one thing about the kid as well, he scores, and he's always had an instinct to score a goal. So he's recorded at West Ham. What he's done in his career up to now so far, it's quite refreshing and wonderful to see. He's a very, very, very good player with that great knack of being able to score your goal and make your goal, and we've seen that now for the past 4, 5, 6 years in his development. He's grown into a top player, the kid.
There's been some. That we all have the same question at the same time, though.
Like any other conversation when you ask them for money. You know,
he walked off.
He'd have a cold palm sweat, and Steve, a hell of a lot of money. But no, I'm doing him a disservice. Look, we had something in place where, you know, I didn't think we would be signing a 16, 17-year-old, but look, he was playing with the men at Hereford back in the day, and it was the academy manager, to be fair, who told me all about him, you know. To say, look, there's this kid playing down in Wales. We must have a look at him, you know. So we went, and that's the way it went. It was great.
Does it give you, because the minute you start talking and it's about players such as that, Steve, and it springs to mind. I think I was listening to you on Talk Sport just a couple of weeks ago, and the people that and the players that have crossed paths with you, the likes of a Harry Maguire or an Andy Robertson. I mean, the ones that are these kind of uncut gems that get the chance where sometimes it sounds like it's quite a democratic approach where either you or whoever you're working with has got to give the other one a nudge going, no, I think we really should take a punt on this lad because other people are sniffing around. When you see what they then go on to become, and given how long you've been in management and continue to be in management, there must be an enormous sense of satisfaction and pride in crossing paths with these boys. The next minute, Andy Robertson's a European champion. He's a Premier League winner. Harry Maguire's the most expensive defender on the planet, and and they all seem really good kids as well, having been through that. Is there a kind of paternal pride in thinking that
Yeah,
I might have had a little,
it's,
not an ego, like I've had a little bit to do with that, and it was mutually beneficial at the time. But then you've just gone on your own trajectory.
well, it's nice to watch them and see them grow. And you're right about all of them. They're really good kids who wanted to learn. I mean, but you need as a manager good people to go and find you these people. And I had a guy called Stan Tennant, who you all know, who'd been in the game, and he's as mad as a marching hare, Stan, but he says, I remember forget a conversation having with Andy Robertson. He says, I've just found, there's a little Billy Whiz playing for Dundee. I said, Billy Whiz? Who the hell's Billy Whiz? So the comic strip, have you know the comic strip? Oh, the Beano? I said, no, I haven't. Billy Whiz. So I thought, oh, really? Anyway, we started watching him and we signed him. And I honestly thought when we were signing him, it was like this little schoolboy coming into the training ground, holding his mum's hand. It was like, wow, and then he'd only been at the club a matter of weeks, and we were starting off against QPR. I think it was QPR away in the Premier League, and we're back in the Premier League, and I didn't really buy him to be. I thought it was going to be for 18 months, 2 years down the line. Anyway, we had a couple of injuries to people at left back, and rather than have somebody filling in, I thought, oh well, let's put the kid in, and he never came out. He was that good on his debut that, wow, who is this? And then to watch his progression, how he was, how he's developed, it does give you a little bit of satisfaction. Of course it does, where you've given them a helping hand and you've had a little bit to do with them. Of course, listen, they have to do it themselves. When you get to the level they've all got to, then it has to come with it from within. But yeah, you take a little bit of satisfaction that you've helped them along the way. Of course it does.
You said you didn't see Jared Bowen, brutally honest, being sort of an England international and going so far. Did you see that with Robertson and Maguire, who both went on to captain the countries?
Well, Harry couldn't get in the team to start with. I mean, we had some really good central defenders in Curtis Davis and Dawson, for example, and I just said to him, look, just be patient. And I have to say, his dad wasn't that patient. I said, look, his time will come. Just let us. He's only 21. He's got plenty of time. Just let him breathe. And that's what happened. He didn't get into the team straight away, but for 2 million quid or whatever it was from Sheffield United. Let me tell you, at Sheffield United, he had played 150 times, was captain of Sheffield United, player of the year for 3 years on the spin. So it's probably a no-brainer, and for 2 million quid back in the day. But he had to be patient. But what we could all see is when he came into the team, this confidence. And you remember Burnsy, the semi-final when we played Sheffield United. And I'm looking at this kid playing for Sheffield United thinking, who's this? Who's playing centre half for them? He was magnificent on the day. We had to get one of our strikers to stop him getting the ball. He's driving into midfield and caused us all sorts of problems. So, you just have to be a bit patient with them. As I said, Harry has now gone on and you watch his development to Leicester, to Man U and think, great, well done to him.
Was the fact that, because I presume there were other clubs looking at him, was the fact that you were a former centre half a factor in Maguire coming to you?
Well, I have to tell you a story. I think I've told it before, Prutz. Stan takes me. So he says, we're not going to the director's box because if you go in the director's box, they'll know what you're coming to. So we sat in the stands, and when I first seen him, I thought he seemed to be a bit heavier than he was when he's a little bit older now, and he's not the best of movers, as we know. So all through the game, Sam, his mobility, Stan. I kept saying about his mobility, and anyway, Stan just sat there and took it. Anyway, after the game, we're coming in, we get in the car, and he goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, I'm still a little bit worried about his mobility and this, that, and the other." And you seem to look at the negative side of him, shall I say? So Stan stopped me and said, "Listen," he said, "You weren't the biggest for a centre half. In fact, you're not quite 6 foot, and your mobility wasn't very good, and you were awful on your left hand side." And you didn't do bad, did you? I'm telling you, the kid's a player, right? So mark it on me, the kid. I said, okay, Stan, you've seen him 10, 12 times. Okay, let's go. Let's press the button. And I'll try and get 2 million quid out of Ehab, which was more difficult than finding the player, believe me.
It's amazing, isn't it? There's such wonderful stories and ones that it's sliding doors moments, isn't it? I mean, there was, and obviously he went on to have a wonderful career, but there was the question marks. I think, was it Sir Alex talking about the way that Jordan Henderson's body shape was and his movement and the way that he ran? And it's one person goes, no, not sure. The other one goes, all right, we'll give it a go. And then suddenly, like you say, the career that he's had. The final game, as my career meandered to an end, was on loan at Coventry against Sheffield United. And I saw this big lump at the back and just kept meandering out of defence on the ball. And looking around going, he's really good at it, without sounding condescending. And you couldn't stop him, even though you're kind of thinking he's not running at speed out of defence. He just had a really nice way of carrying the ball. And it was, I'd have bought him I wouldn't have needed convincing Steve. I'd have bought him in a heartbeat. So that's why I never went. That's why I never went into management.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, I bought him, but it was in a couple of heartbeats. I have to tell you, but it was
£1 million each for a heartbeat.
It was the influence that Stan. You know, and in the end, I had so much trust in all of the lads who worked for me at Hull, in particular, that they did a fantastic job in finding young players, because look, we had to do something a bit different, and we all. I mean, everybody wants to be a young player. Don't get me wrong, but for us, it was. Look, we haven't got a load of money, so let's try and make it work. Let's try and go for a bit of youth and look and try and develop them and all the rest of it. And
did that come with age for you as a manager, Steve? So the Steve Bruce at Birmingham City back in the day, would you have done all of that yourself? Would you have thought, right, I need to see everybody with my own eyes and make the final decision as you get older? Well, that delegation comes in.
I remember the look when you have look, it's all probably different now because it's all done in statistics but there's nothing quite like somebody going to watch a game. And it was funny, I was reading an article of Doug Freeman the other day where he goes and watches them 12, 15 times. Of course, the stats have to back up, you know, but how well has he done as director of football, head of recruitment, wherever he is at Palace? They're bored very, very well. Eze and Elise and Gehui. I mean, all of a sudden, and the boy Wharton, who's playing at Blackburn, you have to say congratulations and well done. But the thing is what you're saying is either him or one of his representatives watches them 15, 18, 20 times. So in the end, you know them back to front and you know what they can give you. So and that is part and parcel of it, of having people. And I was very, very fortunate they were with me a long time. At Birmingham, for example, you know, I remember we gave a young Darren Carter when a young kid. I'm trying to go back. It was a long time ago now, but we were struggling in midfield for a bit of energy. So this big young gangly kid at the time, I thought, well, let's have a go with him, you know. And he ended up at 18, 19, scoring a penalty at Wembley, which took us to the Premier League, which is another great moment, you know. So you're always on the lookout, Prutz, for a little bit of a young one. I mean, who would have thought last night, we're going back to England here now, who would have thought that Qatar, it was 2 years ago, that half of the squad wouldn't be there. It's quite remarkable. So that's the way football evolves. But in management, if you can find a young one or bring a one through, like Jordan Henderson, can be his debut at Sunderland back in the day, David Myler, who you know we bought from Cork for 90 grand and watched his career and how great he did for Hull during his tenure there, you know. So all of them ones are the best part of management, I have to say.
Go on, Burns. You were waving your pen vigorously.
Yeah, I was going to ask I was going to ask about one of the current City players who, to me, has the potential of Harry Maguire. May turn out to be better than Harry Maguire, but I'd be interested what you think on Jacob Greaves. He's been linked with Everton as a possible replacement for Jared Branthwaite if he goes to Manchester United. Have you seen much of Greaves? What do you make of him, Steve?
Well, I've seen him a few times, and he's left-footed, Burns, isn't he? Left-hand sided, is he?
Yeah.
He's naturally left-hand sided, which of course always helps with the balance of a team. I've seen him once or twice, and he's done very, very well, and you can understand, and looks again It looks a really, really good type, which is obviously very, very important. He's brave, and he wants to head it for a centre half, and he handles the ball quite well too. So from afar, he looks a real player. Has he got to go to the next level? You have seen him obviously much more than I have, but for you to make that comment, Burnsy, that he could be better than Harry, then that's a big statement. But look, I'll keep an eye out for him. As I said, I haven't seen enough of him to, but by all accounts, he's a very, very good player, and he's the crown jewel. He's the crown jewel of Hull at the moment, isn't he?
Him and James Goodwin, yeah.
The key thing with those as well is, and you're right to mention Adam Wharton as well, because again, going back to us covering football and just seeing lots and lots and lots and lots of games, and I remember seeing Wharton and thinking, yeah, looks tidy enough on the ball, you know what I mean, gets around the pitch. I've only heard good things of him as a teammate and a young lad, but there is that jump, isn't there, Steve, where you see a player that looked capable in the Championship, workable in the Championship. Jared, another one that stood out. I remember watching him for City against Leeds United, and him and Kamil Grzycki just ran Leeds ragged. The ball carrying ability of Jared at that time, which was just him getting the ball, relieving pressure, and then you think they've got something, and then suddenly surround them with better players. Look at the way Wharton's adapted to the Premier League. You kind of going, oh right, so his ability and the real kind of the seeds of what he's got sometimes do suit a different level of football. So maybe you look at a Greaves who does look very classy and composed in what is an absolute storm of a division in the Championship. Suddenly in the Premier League, where they're going, well, actually, we want you to play and make sure that you do use the ball as well as you do compete as a defender. Sometimes that level that looks daunting from the outside can be exactly what the player needs, can't it, to settle into what they're good at?
Well, 100%. And, a lot of it, people say, oh, it's the coach and he's hard and there's that and the other. Look, there's nothing like playing with better players and good players around you. It helps you more than, in my opinion, any coach can be. Is if you're in a team and you've got Eze and Elise on the side of you, and you can find them with a pass, and all of a sudden this kid's jumped from nowhere in 6 months to getting on the England scene. And you're right. The only thing is now, Prutz, though, it's now to take that little bit of a punt, if you like, from the Championship, because there's many players that I've seen, I'm sure, could do a good job in the Championship. However, they're now 20 million quid's worth, aren't they?
Yeah, not 2 million like Harry was.
They're not 2 million back in the day. Can you imagine me knocking on the door of Ehab and saying, Ehab, I need 20 million? What?
That's the thing, Steve. I was going to mention that, actually. From the player's point of view, so Jacob's 23. He's played over 200 games in his career. He's named in the Championship Team of the Year last year with some great competition as well. He wants to play in the Premier League. If you're him, are you thinking, I'm 23, I've had a great season, I'm ready to go now, and there's interest, West Ham are looking, Forest are looking, Everton are looking. There are obviously going to be others. Roma were interested a year ago, as one example. Are you thinking, I'm ready to go now, I want to go, I've seen Wharton, I've seen X other players, or actually, I'll give it one more year at Hull City, I'll play another 50 games this season and see what happens next season?
Can he do better than what he's just done this season? If you're telling me he's played 50 games, he's won Player of the Season, he's in season of the Championship team, then of course, on every player wants to play at the highest level, and I'm sure he must be thinking to himself, there is a big opportunity here for me because there's not many. Yes, we keep producing number 10s and wide players and all the rest of it, but there's not many out and out left-footed centre-backs. And we've seen yesterday with England, with Trippier playing on the left-hand side, a natural left-footer to give you the balance of your team is worth its weight in gold. And I'm sure the kid, as you said now, as he played 200 times, the time will have to come to say, well, is this sufficient? And of course, I'm sure there's going to be interest, and it's going to be very, very difficult for the kid to turn it down because everybody wants to play in the Premier League.
And I guess it's another sign of how things have changed since, as Prutz mentioned, you brought Harry Maguire for 2 million, captain of Sheffield United. There's now talk of £15 million plus for Greaves. It's incredible, isn't it?
Well, the kid Brantwaite, they turned down 45 million, and he was at Carlisle. So I think I think
Oh, God.
Everton. Everton. I should have took him. He was on my doorstep at Newcastle, and he was only 1.5 million, 2 million quid, I think, from Carlisle when he went to Everton. So, and then again, he's flourished. And what's he now at 45 million all of a sudden? The thing is he's been and done it in the Premier League, whereas the boy Greaves. But you're right, it'd probably take a check of probably north of 20 million now to even consider it, I would have thought.
Steve, just give us
Why
a
didn't you take
taste of that.
Sorry,
No, I'm sorry, Burns. You go first, Burns. I'll jump off the back of you.
I was going to ask, why didn't you take Branthwaite? What was the decision?
We didn't think he was quite ready at that particular time, and really, we had it never really materialized. We knew he was there, and we didn't do enough about it, and we should have done. I should have persuaded myself to go and do it. It was one for the future, if you like, a bit like what Everton did with him, where you buy him, and we weren't in that really position at the time. Sounds ridiculous to really part with 2.5 million quid, you know. And the reports, some of the reports weren't that great either, you know, if I'm being honest. So, but I'd seen enough. I should have put my foot down a bit firmer at the time. Really,
The money that we're talking about is, even in our collective different generations of watching football, the fact that, how does that work, Steve? If you go into a chairman and ownership group, I mean, the models are so vastly different at different groups, where the figures, because the figures inherently don't really mean anything, do they? I know because as supporters talk about it, and there was a bit on TalkSport where Sam Matterface got a lot of stick from Everton fans for suggesting that 3 or 4 of their players could go for a collective 70 million quid, and there was uproar, and he had to chat to them about, oh, sorry, I meant 100, and it all got a little bit weird but you are talking about figures that are just so mind-bogglingly astronomical that. Is that ever discussed between management and ownership? Well, we're going to need 50 million quid, and you can't even picture 50 million pounds, can you? Talk about Jude Bellingham potentially going next move for 100 to 150 million, 200 million. These numbers, in fact, we talk about them as football fans and people with a bit of an inside knowledge on football, but it's so hard if you to sit down and actually get your head around it, because it on the one hand it's extortionate and disgusting. On the other hand, it's completely meaningless, isn't it?
Well, we know the figures that obviously the Premier League club and what it does. And I remember having a conversation with Assam Malam at the time when we were at Hull, and we just got up and said to him, you know, look, it doesn't matter whether you give me 50 million or 30 million. I still don't know whether I can keep you in the division. You know, so let's try and be a bit prudent. Let's try and be as good as what we can be. You know, because to be fair to Assam, he wanted to spend the whole lot. You know, that was the type of character he was. You know what?
Which, as a manager, though, Steve, I mean, another manager would have gone, yeah, absolutely, well, give me all of it then if that's what we're doing. That's the way we go about it.
I think that's where the respect comes in, and who you're working for. And it was quite unique. He was in charge, no others, no real boards. I have to say, Peter Chapman helped me enormously at the time. He had an insight with his father. His father used to be the chairman of Hull, of course. So he helped as well enormously. But we tried to just make the budget work. But you're right now, it's astronomical numbers. It's huge numbers for, there you go. Would there be many teams paying 20 million for Wharton from Blackburn at the time, where you think, oh, that's a lot of money, isn't it? And but you're right, the figures, Prutz, is just astronomical. It's crazy. It's very, very difficult. I have to tell you, very difficult.
And the Wharton one now, there's a little faction of Blackburn fans going, well, you've robbed us getting in for 20. That's what they're thinking, that like, oh, should have been 40. And then you're going, well, You're only saying that because he's gone and done really well. If it had gone and been terrible, they'd have gone, well, we spent 20 million quid on here, a player that can't cut it in the Premier League.
Absolutely. You're right. Yeah.
When you look back on your time at City now, how do you feel about it in terms of your life and your career?
Oh, look, Burns here. We had, let's incorporate everybody. We had a wonderful 4 years. Of course, unfortunately, we got a relegation in there, and then was the big test to try and then bring us back, because it's not easy. You have to go on one way trajectory, and then you have the kicking. It was a really, really, really great time. Who would have thought we'd have been at Wembley 6-7 times or whatever it was? I mean, who would have thought we'd get 2 promotions and be 2-0 up in an FA Cup final? So when I look back on it now, it was sad the way it ended, unfortunately. But it had been on the cards that for a while now. It had been on the cards that, and fair enough. The owner is right to what they want to do. It's their club, but unfortunately, there was too many times where myself and Ehab, didn't see eye to eye, if that's the nice way of putting it. And it was better for me to leave. But looking back on it, I had a wonderful 4 years, really enjoyable.
The thing that stands out as well. Sorry to put in, Burns. The thing that stands out as well, when we've spoken all season about, or last season, about Hull City and that kind of race for promotion and different people's takes on what a Steve Bruce managerial career looks like, and to get a team into the Premier League in such, obviously it would have been a shed load of hard work. It'd have been many hours and many kind of fraught times and pressure, etc. But to do it in the way that you did, when we've been covering clubs, Forest over 20 years outside the top division, Leeds United 16 years outside the top division, drop back down again, don't go up again, and a man that came to Hull City and just, I remember watching the playoff final against Sheffield Wednesday, where Wednesday are all there in
thousands,
big numbers, huge noise, and the perception I got was Hull City rocked up, won the game, and went back home. It's like almost a collective shrug of, well, yeah, this is how we get promoted. This is what we do. So see you bye. And it was just that I don't think there's enough respect paid, particularly to your portion of being in charge of City, that made it look. As I'm saying, I'm really simplifying what you did, but made it look relatively straightforward getting out the Championship, when it absolutely is not. It's a monumental achievement. So to do it as many times as you have in your career, and also with City, that is, as a professional in this side of it now, whoever asked me about Steve Bruce, I'm like, no, you'd die to have him playing in charge of a football club, because he does things that other people take a long time or can't do. I get teams promoted. That's what I do.
Well, that's very, very kind of you, Dave. It was a lot of hard work, and the lads who worked with me, and the people who worked behind me, and everybody who worked there, and of course the group of players. The first time round was a bit unique. We had a sort of an Irish core and a real, what the Irish give you, that real.
Myler was telling us about it.
There was times when I had to give them kick up the arse because of where they were on a Friday night or Thursday night or whatever they were. But
Myler again mentioned that, didn't he, Pros?
He did indeed. Yeah, he loved it.
It was. We had a nucleus of a very decent team, and we had waifs and strays and loans and all sorts. But at the end of the day, we had a very, very decent team, and they went on to, as I said, that spirit and a little bit of togetherness. They were terrific. I have to tell you, a delight to work with. Very, very enjoyable.
Now, can I ask on that? Because David Myler talked at a recent 1904 Club Live event about it, and how you'd haul him in and ask him how many were you out last night and how many players were out and everything like that. And he said you were impressed that 18 players were out, and you said sort of.
As long as it's all of you, I don't mind. As long as it's all of you, I don't mind. That's what.
Team spirit. But did you have spies in the town that told you what was going on, like Fergie used to do at Man United? Did somebody slip you the info?
Yes, but I'm not going to drop a minute. And he used to be so proud that he could tell me, and he thought he was looking after them. He thought, well, I was looking after him, and I drove him home, and I took him home, and I'd done this one, and it was like, oh, really? It was but yeah, that spirit that the only Irish could give you, and Myler epitomised it. There is somebody who wasn't blessed with the greatest of ability. Let's be brutally honest about that. But by God, did he make himself a player and turned himself into a very, very decent player through his hard work, his attitude, his will to win, and yeah, terrific, absolutely. What a great
Did
free
Fergie
transfer
keep-
he was. What a great free
Yeah.
transfer he was.
I'm intrigued. Did Fergie keep tabs on you? Because there was a bit of a drinking culture at Man United, wasn't there?
A bit.
I think.
Jesus, Burns.
I think though, Dave. I think when everybody talks about drinking culture, it was the culture. Full stop.
Across the board. Across the board. Mm.
And I remember. I've said this many times at Man U. We never used to leave the players' lounge till 7:30, 7:45 on a Saturday night. We're always having to sit and having a few beers afterwards. I don't think there's a beer to be had now in a players' lounge. It's all energy drinks and all the rest of it, which is the way forward, of course. But it was a culture everywhere that, the culture of this country really is that, isn't it? Is to go and have a drink. And
the other part about it, Stevie. So I've got this sat next to me, just little bits and pieces on my phone. But that nowadays it's back in everyone in the pocket looking at the phone. So again, generationally, you'd go and without sounding like a boring old fact, you'd go and converse. So whether you'd have it out about you were crap today and you should have done that or whatever, or a little pat on the back, or whether your wives were there, or whether it was to foster proper rapport, team spirit, and relationships. I'm sure there's people that you've spent times in dressing rooms with because you're there for a very intense period of time, then you all go your separate ways. But the special ones stick. So there must be so many that we would recognise as these famous players that are your mates, that you've had these formative experiences together, you shared it all together, and were bonded by that. And they stick with you for life, don't they?
Absolutely. Stay with you for life. And you're right. The telephone now, I've seen players now, the modern day player, as soon as they walk in to the dressing room, they're pulling out the telephone, You have to remind them what you're looking at. They're probably looking at, what they're saying about them or whatever, and
that
the number of times I'd say to them, by the way, do not even go into social media, because let's be brutally honest, on social media, there's nothing nice to say about anything.
No.
Nobody says anything kind anymore in there. So, just be careful with it, especially the younger players. But it's a different culture now, isn't it? It's a different way and all the rest of it. And that's the way the world's gone.
Steve, something that was an issue at Hull City last season, and I spoke to Liam Rossini on more than one occasion about this, was particularly the social media element and how he'd got a relatively young group and that they were very impressionable and that they would come in after training and particularly after games and they'd be on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and they'd be reading not only what the press was saying, but what fans were saying. And it was having a really big impact. And it was something that he was having to work, and his staff were having to work extra hard on to deal with. How big an issue is that? And over the years, obviously you've been in management a long time. How has that become a greater issue for you to have to deal with in a dressing room?
Oh, it's a big issue because, you can have people who are, who take it in. It's very, very, very difficult to try and police, especially when you see it in a dressing room, you can say to people, look, hey, careful what you're watching and this, that, and the other. But the number of meetings that you do have on this is because when they go away, I mean, everybody you see now, not just kids we're talking about here now, it's everybody. It's everybody's newspaper all of a sudden, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, it's very, very difficult to try and police. You try and give them as better advice and my advice would be never to go on it. I know that might sound ridiculous for a lot of people, but I don't think social media, and I don't think what you're going to get out of it if you're a footballer, because, as I said, usually it's negativity. And if you keep reading about it constantly, it's a problem.
You mentioned Liam there because he was one of your players. Did you see a manager in him?
Well, I know he really, really enjoyed the game. he thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I was intrigued that I was going to be honest. I thought he'd go into the coaching side. I thought he'd go into the coaching side. Whether he could go and take on the actual job itself, I was a little bit surprised about. Never surprised that he was going to go into coaching. And he's done very, very well. I think it's probably the harshest sacking of them all this summer has probably been Liam. And it gives you a lesson of how difficult it is these days, because from the outside, again, I'm looking from the outside, I thought he did very, very well to just miss out on the playoffs. I thought it was a really, really harsh decision to let him go.
Is that the perils of football, though, when you've got, particularly nowadays, where you've got an owner that's investing, millions and millions of pounds. He wants a specific style of play. Obviously, there's other issues behind the scenes about selection and types of players and this, that, and the other. And there's so many. It's just so difficult, isn't it?
Well, you've just mentioned three things there where an owner invests in millions and millions, wants to play his certain way, and wants to do it his way, which is his prerogative. Look, he's bought the club, and he's his prerogative. But as I said, I think it was very, very harsh. Philosophies on football, where I was reading it once particular, but this is the modern day way. This is how often have we seen it now, and a bit similar to myself going back. Like myself and Ehab was never going to work, and whereas with his father it was absolutely terrific. To work for, and that's why I went for his father. His father was such a wonderful man and really was first thing he said to me is, I don't really know a little bit about football, but a lot of people tell me you do. So you get on with the job. You get on with the job and you do it, and I'll try and back you as best I can. How refreshing is that? And unfortunately, nowadays it's a little bit different.
What changed, Steve, with Ehab? Between his father and Ehab, what was that? How did that dynamic change?
Well, unfortunately, when the dad got sick, then Ehab became more and more, board meetings, and we never had really board meetings or whatever, where the dynamics changed, and it started with recruitment and wanted to make change there and make other changes, and it was fairly obvious very, very early that it wasn't going to work between the two of us, so fair enough. And of all the things I can hear about what's happened now is the different styles, or whatever you want to call it, and how you want your football club to be run and how you want your team to play. Not just enough to win these days, you've got to do it in a certain way.
Yeah. Burnsy?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, really. Do you regret leaving? And I know you went. I mean, because
there's not many people walk out of a Premier League job, is there?
True.
Which probably reflects exactly what you're saying, though, Steve, doesn't it? And given what we know about you as a man and as a manager, you're not that's a decision that you would have not taken remotely lightly, would it?
No, absolutely. Who walks away from the Premier League? You work all your life to get in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Who, chance? And we had just put on such a wonderful performance. I know we only won 1-0, but we were head and shoulders above Sheffield Wednesday on the day.
It was one of the most one-sided finals I've seen.
We totally dominated from start to finish and had the nucleus of a very, very decent team again. But I just knew, and the build-up to it and the months leading to that, it wasn't behind the scenes. It wasn't easy. And after a long, hard think over the summer, it was obvious for the best of the club that it wasn't going to work. So it was best to leave, and that's the decision I had to take. But do I regret it at times, Bernsey? Could I have done more? I think the world of them as a family. The sisters and Ehab, all of them as people. And the dad in particular had a wonderful relationship with. But it was obvious that me and he had different ideas of how we wanted the club to be run. And that's where you have to stick to your beliefs and say, okay, that's the way you want to do, and then it's not for me. Thank you very much, and we'll call it a day. And I think he was just as relieved as what I was. I think, and to be fair to him, he thought I was too intense and I was too this and I was too that, and I can fully go there with it. I never left him alone because I'm the manager. I need to improve. If you're manager and you stop knocking the door to improve, then I think that's when you realise your time's up.
Begs the question, and this is possibly jumping on me trying to read Burns' mind there, given I'm just looking at the clock as well. Given all that, given everything we've spoken about, given where you've been, who you've worked for, the players that you've seen, the clubs that you've been at, and your current situation now, the question obviously is where's Steve Bruce going next? And is there a want? Is there a need? Is there that hunger? Do you ever get to a stage where that innate competitor goes, do you know what? I've done pretty well here. Let me just enjoy the spoils, or are you as mad as the rest of them? Where you go, do you know what? I want to be back in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's jumping at me. I have to tell you, it's been a long winter since Christmas. I have to say, to start with, it's been quite nice. And you go here and you go there and you go around the world and go and see places and lovely. Saturday afternoon comes along and you think,
I should be somewhere else.
that camaraderie and that buzz what you get. It's Dave, who knows? I'd love to be involved. I've said many times now, if a CEO or owner or whatever asks me a question, I think I would be able to give them the right answer. In some capacity, I'd love to be involved, whether that's at the coalface. Let's wait and see. But I've been out for 18 months, which is the longest I've ever been out, and there's a bit of me to say, come on, Steve, I've got to do something. But what? People go from football, like yourself, Dave, to the next best, which is the media, because it gives you an involvement in football, because you love it that much. You like talking about it, watching it, commentating on it, and how well have you done something very, 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 very well.
Thank you very
That's
much.
the next step, and I've had a little bit of that. I've done a little bit of this, and I was asked to go to Germany and thought, well, no, not really. I'm going to give that a miss and just watch from afar. But we'll see. We'll see what happens over the next few weeks or whatever. But never say never, do you?
No.
Steve, one thing I wanted to ask you, obviously, Hull City we talked about Liam going, and they've gone in a different direction, bringing in Tim Volter from his last job was at Hamburg. He's obviously he's coming to a different country. He's inheriting a group that had a very defined way of playing under Liam, possession based. But he knows he's got 8 to 10 players that need to come in. Is that, if you're coming in at this stage of the summer, you've got a pre-season ahead of you and a group of players that did well last season, but you've got an opportunity to shape it because you need they haven't got any strikers, for example, and you've obviously got question marks over Jacob Greaves, over Jaden Philligy. I don't know if your paths crossed at Villa when he was in the academy, but is that a big opportunity for the new manager that he can bring in so many players whilst also trying to balance financial fair play and the finances of a club that haven't got parachute payments?
Well, there you go, and I don't think there's anything better than a management side if you've got the time and you've got a little bit of money to invest, is to put your own team together. And that was certainly the situation where I had, when I took over from Nick Barmby, I think they'd finished 8th, but there was a little bit of work to be done. And as I said, we begged, stole and borrowed and pinched. And arguably the one that we took the biggest gamble on, or I did, was a German striker who I paid £2 million for, who was, I can't say that on the podcast, but didn't quite adapt to playing the way what we wanted to play. Sort of politically correct like that. But the rest of Big Abdullah and Al Mohammadi, and so you put your own stamp on it, and it's a wonderful opportunity given that he's got a few resources to go with, and he's got this, that, and the other. It's a nice opportunity to build your own team, of course.
Go on, Bertie.
Contact you. Would you have fancied it?
Would I have fancied it? Oh, there's no saying that you don't go back. Is that right?
Fair enough.
I
Fair
think
enough.
no. Look, I had a wonderful 4 years. I wouldn't want to try and put any tarnish on it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Burns. He was arguably in management. How could it have been any better in the 4 years? It was terrific.
Oh no, it
Steve,
was
on Jaden, go on, Burge, sorry.
No, it was fantastic. Europe and FA Cup final and promotions and everything like that, and it was an
Do you know
amazing
something,
time to be
Bertie?
part of it.
The biggest regret I had was really not taking on Europe. Like I knew we had to leave the building very, very early because we just didn't have the resources or the manpower, to be able to cope. And yet, me whole theory on the FA Cup changed. I remember when we played Sunderland, and Sunderland put out their reserves. If you remember, when we played Sunderland in the quarter-final of the FA Cup, and I remember getting their team sheet thinking, they've just put their reserves out, that they were really ditching the FA Cup, if you like, to try and stay in the Premier League. And lo and behold, when I think back on it now, I should have gone stronger and try and stay in the Europe rather than being sucked into this. Oh, I've got to stay in the Premier League, and there's too many games and all the rest of it. So, yes, I made mistakes along the way. That was one of them, really, because our venture into Europe really didn't last very long, unfortunately.
I agree. I remember me and Swanee saying it at the time. He's not gone strong enough
There you
here.
go.
I don't know why.
You're
I know why he did it.
criticizing me. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
No,
looking
I
back,
loved watching your team.
looking back, a mistake, which you have to hold your hands up. But hey, Hull in Europe, absolutely fantastic.
It's glory days, isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. Yeah.
Steve,
It was absolutely.
on the subject of Jaden, did you? Because obviously he was at Villa's academy around the year that you left Villa Park. Did you come across him? Were you aware of him as a player?
On who? Sorry.
Jaden Philogene.
Aiden Philogene.
Yeah, vaguely. I have to say, not a great deal. I don't know a great deal about the boy. I have to be brutally honest. No. What year was he at Villa?
Was it 2016 to 2018? I think.
2016. I think I left. No. It was obviously before me, was it? Don't know. I'll have to look there. I'll have to have a look at that one because the name rings true. But he's a good player, isn't he? The kid.
Yeah. He was very good last season. Came in from Villa. Got into the England under 21, scored on his debut, and he's another like Jacob Greaves, lots of Premier League interest. But on his day, he's a real talent, isn't he, Brooks?
He's only one of many players that you've seen over 40 years, Steve. So I can't believe you can't remember him. This is terrible. I mean, Jesus. There must be that's the thing. There must be so many. If you think about if you're the head of a football club as a manager if you filter it all the way down, the thousands of academy kids that kick around now and that one. And it was a great thing that when you read all the correspondence about what Sir Alex Ferguson was like, of almost kind of having chapter and verse on, oh yeah, he's a young kid from such and such that's playing there. You think, my God, that is the brain space that's needed for that is staggering.
Yeah. Do you know what? Do you know what's frustrating in a lot of clubs as well? Sometimes the academies aren't on the same site as the first team.
Yeah.
So you don't see them every day. So you don't interact with them every day. You don't, you don't see them around the training ground or whatever, because they have their own training grounds and their own facilities, and that is sometimes enormous. But yeah, some of that. I mean, some of the teams now and the number of players and all the rest of it is now mind-boggling to try and keep an eye on it. You always know the good ones, though. You're always aware of the good ones. I mean, let's be fair, we've all heard of Bellingham for years. My mates at Birmingham were saying we've got a 15-year-old who looks like a superstar. This is 5 years ago, so, it's, I remember Keith Burchin ringing me to say, by the way, you've got to come and sign this kid, and he was 16 at the time,
Well, there was a great article in the Telegraph at the weekend, which was talking about, I think it was Pep Clotet was mentioning what he was like and how he adapted, and there was discussions about where he would go next, but it was so far down the line with all these kind of the due diligence that teams had put into him, where they were saying, "Oh well, is he going to go to a United?" Because he went to go and see Man United and met with Cantona and Ferguson and all those, but it was done and dusted with Dortmund because of the minutes that they could offer him and the way that he's done about it. I mean, maybe we're talking about generational talent with regards to this, but he's done that well that maybe he was always going to do that well. Steve's gone, look.
He's still there.
You there, Steve?
Oh, he's gone.
Steve's gone. He
had a hard out at 1 hour done.
He hated your question. He just thought it was absolute rubbish.
What a top man.
He's amazing. Amazing.
So I'll admit it. That's given me a warm glow this morning, just listening to him again. He was a great bloke. He was just the sort of bloke you'd want to go for a pint with and spend time with. And we didn't even get into his stories. He's got some amazing stories. And it's about, I would have said to him, it's about time he updated his autobiography, because I think it was last done about 20 years ago. And
the other thing as well, Ben.
I think he's back with us. Is he back?
No.
Have we got Steve? Are you back with us?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Oh yeah, we've got you.
I don't know what happened.
We were just saying nice things about you.
We thought Burns had seen you off.
He was moaning about your lack of stories. That's what he was doing.
No, I wasn't. I was just saying it's about time you updated your autobiography, because you've got so many stories. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been so lucky. How lucky have I been? I've been in it for 45, 46 years, as a player, manager, whatever. Amazing. It's half the thing is, though, Burns, you can't remember half of them when you get to my age. It's that long ago. So you're recalling it all. But yeah, maybe one day. Look, I've said it many times that the first one I did it for money, and I didn't do it properly. So really, I think if you're going to do something properly these days, especially a book, is do it properly, get some time into it, and then have a good crack at it. But yeah, we'll see.
The thing, I mean, as we were just saying, then we were being terrifically nice about you, Steve, because we thought you dropped off on something far better to do, which you obviously should have, given the fact you've been speaking to us three for an hour. But and without sounding overly twee or kind of or needlessly mushy, again, a player of a certain level that I got to, that grew up watching a player such as yourself playing for a club like yours, and then going into management and doing what you've done in management, and knowing so many players that have played for you, none of them, and you know what football's like, it's an absolute viper's nest. So every single one that I would ask about you, they'll have a little story, and they'll also have what you were like as a manager and a man to look after people. And across the board, it's, yes, wonderful portion of my career playing for Steve Bruce and everything that understood with that. And it's been well documented, and it was never something that I wanted to ask you about, because you've said it so many times. Your time at Newcastle, not just being in charge, but everything around the focus on you being in charge. Everything that was said, done, written. People cast so many judgments in football, and you are sat there, and the man that I knew and met, and Baz and Burnsy will attest to this as well, was the incredible job that you've done in very, very, very testing circumstances, which then spill over into the personal, and just the way you carried yourself and what you've done in the game. Like I said, there is somewhere next for you, but you would be well within your rights to give it the proverbial two fingers and say, do you know what? Show me your 45 years in the game to 99% of the people that pass judgment on football, and you can walk away with the upper hand. And I just thought, as long as you know that, and you do know that, and you're a very balanced individual that's taken all that on board and has just done wonderful things.
Well, Dave, do you know something? And thanks for the kind words. I mean, look, the vast majority of people who are bumped into in the streets, a lot of them, there was never any abuse.
Yeah.
I think everybody knew how difficult a job it was, and the circumstances. Mm-hmm. Look, they were an angry crowd, and they weren't happy of what was happening in their club, And once that happens, and I've said it many times, if there's instability at the top of you, and unfortunately, that's the way it was. I knew the way it was. I had people like, my mate Alan Shearer ringing me, and Souness and Dalglish, how difficult it was. Let me tell you though, and looking back on it, to finish 12th and 13th, I was quite pleased of the job we'd done. It was difficult. And by the way, I still would have to go. I would have to go and do it. It's a quite remarkable club. I'm pleased now it's on the trajectory it's on, and they've got owners who can invest and who want to try and take it to where it's going to get to. But look, it was 2.5 difficult years, but still there was lots of people at the club which I really enjoyed, and it was the challenge of a lifetime. The challenge of a lifetime, which, again, you're talking about social media here. A lot of it was directed on there, and unfortunately, it ended in.
He's gone. He's on his phone. He's
run out of data.
we've kept him so long.
Yeah,
it was
amazing,
so nice to see him and hear him. And he's back. Well, we were just talking nicely about you again.
Have I lost
again?
Have I gone AWOL again?
Yeah, I was
Somebody
just
ringing me on my phone. I don't know who it was.
Right.
There you go.
All right. Well, it might be a job, Steve. We hope it is if you want to get back in. You just can I just say on behalf of all of us at the 1904 Club and all the City fans, you've given us a warm glow coming on this podcast. It's been fantastic to see you.
I've lost you, Burnsy. I don't know where you are. I haven't a clue what to do.
All right.
You've got you, Steve.
Right.
No, Steve, we've got you. You're okay. You're there. You're still there.
Right. This is one of the most shambolic endings we've had, and we've had a few, to be perfectly honest.
It's a lovely garden, by the way, isn't it? At Chateau Bruce. It's a lovely garden.
Yeah.
I think we're probably best leaving it there. Prutz, unless Baz is going to tell me different, enjoy Germany.
I shall. My next game's on Wednesday, but I've got to say hello to David Anthony Morod, who got in touch with me via Instagram because he was in Hamburg this weekend on a stag do, and my word, there was a lot of them. And then I forgot about it. I apologise for that, David. But then we bumped into each other, and he is a good friend with a lad I used to play football with for Hesel Rangers back in the mid-90s, who obviously we rang and didn't pick up, which was great. Phil Days, that's you, who actually works at Hull City. So hopefully he's listening to this as well.
Phil, yeah.
Daisy, yeah, we were in an attack-minded, free-thinking, all-out kind of entertainment Hesel Rangers side back in the day. But it was lovely to see the lads. There was 3/4 of them looked very bemused when I got dragged over for a picture because it looked like I'd asked these lads for a picture saying, "Hello, my name's David Prutton," and them just looking blankly at me, which that might be 4 days of a stag do in Hamburg. I don't know. But they were all lovely, so I'll say a big hello to them. And hopefully you all got back in one piece, because I must admit, for a third night on a stag do, everyone looked remarkably in good shape. So whether that's because they're all old sods and couldn't do it properly, I don't know. But maybe they were just better at it than potentially we were back in the day. But hello to them, that's what I'll say.
What's your next game, Prutz?
The next game is on Wednesday, which I need to remind myself of, which is Croatia against Albania.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've got them. We've got Poland, Austria after that in Berlin. We've got Georgia, Czech Republic, 22nd of June. Then they're playing Turkey. Then we've got a quarter-final on the 5th of July.
Are they looking after you out there?
In what sense?
Well, are they looking after you?
I'm being paid and I've got accommodation. I think that's as far as it goes when it comes to the commentary world, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there was a madman with an axe in Hamburg yesterday.
There was, I've again, it's a shame. I mean, obviously that's an understatement. It's a shame that happens, because that could have been very, very brutal, couldn't it? But I think it was swiftly dealt with. And it's a part of town that I'd want to go and explore. But I mean, if you've never been to Hamburg, you should get yourselves across it, because it's a beautiful city. Lots of history and heritage and churches. I presume a lot of it's been bombed as well. It's been rebuilt, but it's a lovely place to come. Speaking of lovely people,
can you hear us, Steve?
I think I've got you back. I do apologise. Technology and me just go. I don't know what's happened, but I think the internet stopped in and out.
Right, we were just going to wrap it up, and we were going to say thank you very much for sparing us the time today. I'm sure the City fans appreciate it. You've given us a warm glow this morning, just with your sheer presence and your company, and so many stories we could have got into. I do hope you'll come and join us another time. We'd love to have you back.
No problem.
And,
Give us a shout anytime. Enjoy
we
Germany, Prutz.
I shall. I was just describing Hamburg to the chaps. It's if you've never been, it's a place you should come to. There he is.
Brilliant. Steve, yeah, just to echo what Burnsy said, thank you so much for giving up an hour or so of your time. And it's been great to hear from you. And I'm sure the City fans listening to this would have been absolutely delighted to hear your voice again. And obviously you did so much for their football club. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this morning.
Cheers, Steve.
Prutz, enjoy Germany.
I shall. I'll keep you posted. I'm still here this time next week, so I presume we'll be doing it again. If you want to hear any more,
we will. But hopefully, you'll be in the. I'm flying to Chicago on Monday, so you'll be in the safe hands of Fletch and Burnsy. Hopefully, so
Chicago for a holiday.
No, work. Going out as a guest of the tourist board to spend a week in Chicago and going all around Illinois to
a holiday,
just to review a few things.
What? Is this a real thing?
Work. Yeah. I did Vegas before Christmas.
How on earth did you get that gig?
Just by looking pretty.
I never realised Vegas was that. You went as a reviewer of Las Vegas.
Yeah, I did Vegas at Christmas. Yeah,
I knew you went, but I just that is. I mean, that's the great. I mean, I know we've spoken about Premier League football managers, but that's the greatest job I've ever heard. Getting flown out to do that type of stuff.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years, Pros. Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah. Every now and then. I saw your chapter and verse on Mablethorpe about 5 years ago. It was riveting.
Butlins, yeah, from Vegas to Butlins.
You're lucky.
I'll tell you what, Butlins has scarred me for life.
As it should. That's what it's there for. Yeah. Sorry, Steve. Steve, listen to us talk utter rubbish now at the end of the podcast. We're so sorry, mate. Christ.
Thanks for your time. No,
He's
can't hear you.
Cheers, Steve.
See you, Steve. See you, chaps.
All the best.
Pleasure. A pleasure. Chicago. Oh,
Cheerio.